All right, check it out. Lassen Land and Trails Trust has this annual farm to table fundraiser dinner, and they've just announced that they're excited about the fact that the featured artist at the farm to table dinner is the amazing and talented Randy Robbins Photography, who's generously offered to donate a print for the auction for this dinner. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to bring you in the back room and talk through this whole process of how these prints get made. So I'm going to give them a canvas print. We're going to print a 20 by 30 canvas on Hahnemühle Cezanne canvas, which is a very fancy sounding name, but that's our stuff. So first, let's find the image, get the paper loaded, and we'll talk through the whole process of printing a canvas print. Here we go. All right, they got on my website in the archives section, and they found this image right there, which is called Thompson Reflections. It's a local landscape. It's taken on one of the local ranches. They thought it would be perfect for the event. So that is our image right there. So the first step for me is pulling that image up in Photoshop probably and adjusting the size of the image. In this case, I've already done it at a 36 by 24, which tells me that'll be just a little bit too big, which is good for this size print. So I don't need to resize the image at all. So we can drop it right into our print software. All right, this is a program called Canon Professional Print and Layout, and it lets you choose what kind of image you want to do. In this case, I'm doing a gallery wrap. This is where you can pick like what you want your edges to look like. The little dotted line shows you the actual face of the image, and I've got this set for 1.5 inch wide frame, stretcher bar frame, and mirrored edges, which means at the edge of the image, it'll wrap around the outside and mirror what is on the face instead of like zooming in on the image. You can do it a few different ways, but I think that looks the best on this particular image. So that's what it'll look like coming off of the paper, and you get all your settings right, and you get ready to print. On the printer, we got to make sure our paper settings match the computer settings. So we got to add our roll of canvas. You never want to touch that stuff. So we get the fancy gloves on. The oils from your hands can get pretty nasty, so we don't want to mess around with that. There's our canvas. We're going to take this bad boy out of here. And you got to load it the right way. I always have to think. We want it coming off the roll like that. So the printer to feed the canvas. And in the settings on the program, you tell it it's canvas, and then you also have to make sure it's using the right profile for that paper. This printer will print on a whole bunch of different stuff, and if you tell it to print on, glossy photo paper and then you throw canvas in there, it'll freak out. The ink will get all weird and stuff. So make sure all your settings are right, and then we can go ahead and hit print. Boom. Are you sure you want to do all that? Yes, I am. All right, that thing's working its magic. That's always a little nerve-wracking picking all those settings and things. That canvas is about $300 a roll. And inks for this printer are Very expensive also, so every mistake you make is costly, right? All right, so there we go. There's your image, 30 by 20. So I print it with these crop marks. These help you fold it in the right place when you're putting it on the frame. So if you kind of follow the line from that mark to those corners, that's 1.5 inches. That's what'll wrap around the outside of the frame. So when you get like this funky pattern right here, that smack in the middle is gonna be your corner. And you won't see that weird mirror thing going on. But so that's phase one. That's the big part of the job, right? Now we're gonna trim the edge here, and we'll let it sit for at least 3 hours, probably longer than that. I might even go overnight just because of what time it is right now. But before we varnish, you like to let the ink completely dry and gas out, as they say, before you put varnish on it. But happy with it, looks good, colors look good, brightness looks good. That's gonna be a pretty canvas. I like to use a rotary cutter for cutting canvas. Gives you good clean edges. So I'm basically lining up those little crop marks. I'm going to give myself enough material to stretch it on, right? You got to grab it with pliers and pull on it when you stretch. So you don't want to be grabbing the image. There you go. All right, it is the next day and we are in the basement. This is what I like to call the finishing department of the gallery here. And we're gonna spray some varnish. So this is the stuff that I use. Breathing Colors, the brand. It's called Timeless Varnish. I like the satin. It is the best stuff. And a gallon of this is just a little bit over $100. So you don't want to mess this up either, right? It's all non-toxic, amazing stuff, certified, archival. Protects against UV rays and scuffing and scratching and moisture and all the rest. So we've got our image mounted up here with our fancy clips, and we're gonna just hit it with varnish. All right, so we've got our varnish in our sprayer, and we're gonna basically do 1 coat vertical passes and then 1 coat horizontal passes, and then we're gonna walk away. That's it. You don't wanna go too thick, you don't wanna go too thin. It's a more art than science, as they say. But I've seen people wear like oxygen mask protection stuff with this varnish, but I think that's overkill, personally. It's non-toxic. So first you wanna make sure your sprayer's spraying. Don't waste too much. And we're set to go. All right, vertical first. Phase 1 complete. Kind of look at the coverage. You know you got good coverage. You're good. I'll show you what that looks like in the angle so you can see what I'm doing. So it's kind of hard to get on this camera, but you can sort of see the reflective nature of it, right? while it's wet. And you're just looking for that good even coverage in the light. So looks sweet, no empty spots. Not too thick, not too thin. So we just walk away and let that dry. Yeah, it looks good. All right, we're back upstairs. And this is the finished varnished product here. It looks really good. I kind of got to get in the right reflective light to sort of see what the varnish does to the finish on that thing. But that's what a good varnish coat looks like. And that will keep this thing safe from moisture and UV light and all of those things. But you can kind of see the finish. Looks sweet. So I'm happy with that. Now we got to stretch it, right? The varnish kind of soaks in enough that you get those ripples, and you can tell this is a fabric now, right? So 100% cotton does that a little bit when it gets moist. So there you go. So this is a 30 by 20 canvas. Under the table here, I got my boxes of stretcher bars. These are probably 30s. You lay them there and you kind of see where they end. That's a 30, which makes that a 30. So there's half of our frame. And let's see, is that gonna be a 20? Same routine. Yeah, so 2 30s, 2 20s. We'll knock that frame together, make sure it's square, and move on from there. There's a few different designs, different kinds of these bars. Some use an actual piece in the corner that stretches them apart. And you can kind of stretch after you staple with those a little bit. These ones are one piece pine, and they're very simple. As long as you get them to go together right. None of that other stuff is needed. Sometimes they're a little wonky right out of the gate, and you gotta make sure you get them square. So we will make sure before we stretch. Looks pretty close. Now we throw it on the table and we see what we got. So the first thing I check on this is just that it's laying flat. Make sure none of the corners are floating. Sometimes you get a knot in the wood or something and it gets all bent and you got to reject one of the pieces. But so I just line up this bottom edge along that white line, and then we'll kind of make sure we're square along his back. I got pretty close, just eyeballing it. But you kind of tweak that a little bit. Make sure you are squared off, and then now we're looking at actual 30 by 20. Square corners are important. All right, so then after having the wood up here, I kind of make sure I don't have any little splinters or anything on here, because we got to put the canvas face down on the table, which isn't a big deal because it's varnished, right? So everything looks good there. I like to go right side up so I know this is the bottom, right? And I do avoid sliding it around as much as possible, right? And when you do, you're gonna be really light with that while you do it. But this is the frame. It's got like a beveled edge on the front and then a flat edge on the back. So the canvas is suspended on the very edge, on that front side. So you want to make sure you do it the right way. All right, so now this is the back side of our frame. And then I take these pre-printed corners and I want to make sure to line them up properly, right? So now I'm looking at this little check mark here, making sure it is right on the edge of my frame. Same thing on this side. And simultaneously, I want that one to be on the edge also. Then I know I'm in the right spot with my corner. Very close. But you got to do that with both corners, obviously. All right, so when I feel like I've got those two things correct, then I got to bust out some tools, right? Staple gun. There's an air compressor over there you might hear it kick on. We're going to need some canvas pliers. These grab the edge of the canvas, and they've got this little knob on there that lets you pry a little bit. You'll see that. And scissors we'll use a little bit later. But I'm confident that bottom edge is right, so I'm going to fold that around the corner nice and tight. And my first couple staples will go right there. All right, 2 staples there. And we're going to flip it. We're not going to slide it. I'm going to lift it. I'm going to get my pliers. And I'm going to stretch against those staples right across the middle. Boom, boom. So we got tension right here. So we're going to do essentially the same thing on both of these sides and pull tension so the middle is stretched, so to speak. I'll probably speed this video up for this part. Okay, so now we have these 4 points stapled, and you see like ripples that way and then some ripples up here. Essentially what you're doing now is working your way out at the same time on all 4 edges, stretching your way into the corners. So I'll do that in fast motion, and then we'll talk about the corners real quick. All right, so we've arrived at our first corner. So let me move the camera so you can see that. All right, so now we're gonna bust out the scissors. And this is thick canvas. A lot of canvas, you don't have to do this, but this is the heavy duty stuff. So I cut a chunk out of these corners to help with the fold and keep the lump out when you stretch it. So basically, we're gonna fold this so that the top edge of the image and the bottom edge, or top, bottom, whatever's whatever, is gonna fold over the sides. So it'll make sense when you get it there, but you're essentially, we're gonna fold that tight that way, and then we're gonna fold that tight that way, and it's gonna wrap like that. You want this seam on the top and bottom and not on the side. But before we do that, we want to get our sides as tight as we can before we commit, right? So I do switch my staple directions right there. We're going to cover that with tape. Some people are very particular about that. I'm not. It's kind of the ugly part. Call it custom. Call it whatever you want, but that's how I'm doing it. So we are stretching our way into the corner with both sides of the fabric. When we get here, we're going to make sure we get this nice and tight. And I'm going to hide a staple. The camera's in the way. I like to hide a staple right there. Now this side's done, right? That's gonna fold over. I'm gonna make sure that that is tucked away where it's not creating a lump. That staples early, but that's all right. Now we're gonna pull that tight. Get one more there. And then this is the forearm workout part. We're gonna get that one right there. Boom, boom. That's one corner. And that is gonna look sweet. So I'm gonna do the rest of them kind of quickly, but that just gives you an idea of the process. All right, this is the point where you can peek. See how you did. We got no ripples. Our mirror stuff looks like it's just in the right spot. Again, remember that weird corner thing? Now it looks normal, right? It's right on that edge. It wraps around. Very nice. So, stretching is done. Now we got to make it pretty on the back. So now you have a few chances to screw up all the work you just did, because you got to bust out the knife here. We're going to trim our edges. Very carefully, right? You always want to think about where that knife is when you're moving around grabbing stuff. You do not want to scratch something that shouldn't be scratched. So far, so good. We are 2 out of 4. This doesn't always need to be done. It kind of depends on the size of canvas you print on and how it comes off the roll. But it makes the next step a little bit nicer if you do it. All right, this is a acid-free, like archival tape that's used for book binding and in other applications similar to this. And this is what I use on the backs of these to hide the staples and just clean things up a little bit. You might have seen canvases with like a plastic sheet across the back. You can get those also and just staple them on. I've read that there can be issues in some climates with those actually trapping moisture. So I've stayed away from them. Probably very slim chance, and they're perfectly fine, but this is the part that goes against the wall, right? So why risk it? To me, it's like, keep it simple. But I think this tape makes it look nice. All right, there is the pretty tape. Now we gotta locate the top again. Make sure we're looking at the top. And we gotta put a hanger on there. All right, so we're gonna take this whole thing and line it up on these inch marks on my cutting mat here. It's a 30-inch canvas, so 15 is the center. So I got one of these little sawtooth hangers. Center that guy on 15. I have slipped with this screwdriver in this moment and scratched the ink right off the top of the canvas before. Back to square one. You don't want to see that happen. Like I said, there's a million ways to screw it up, right? I forgot one thing. Now we're done. We'll do the grand tour here. So there you go, off to the farm to table dinner. Hopefully somebody has a good night at the auction and wins that bad boy. But I hope this video answered some questions. I always get questions about the process, and thought this would be a helpful way to show how it's done. So if you look at that varnish again that way, when it's stretched, you can really see what the varnish kind of does. But again, that's a satin. There's a gloss and there's a flat or a matte. Satin's kind of in between. Good stuff. Thanks for watching.